in IT for 20 years. He started by teaching PowerShell version 1 as a Microsoft trainer. Once he began, he fell in love. Jeremy has used PowerShell as his primary tool in systems administration since that time. He currently works with automating Azure and Office 365 in a hybrid environment for the North Carolina Judicial Branch. Join me now in welcoming Jeremy to teach another outstanding session of PowerShell. Jeremy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I was planning on doing the same thing that I did for the regional meeting, which was kind of an introduction to PowerShell. So we'll kind of go over some of the basics on what the console looks like and how we interact with it, and just kind of explore some data across that. If you guys have your chat open, I would ask you guys type in there what kind of experience that you have with PowerShell today, because if the group has more experience, we can pivot and move into something that might be more beneficial to everybody. All right, excellent. So it sounds like I was on the right path to start with. So we'll stick with kind of a primer on welcome to PowerShell. It's awesome. So let me start by sharing my screen. All right. So quick primer. So what I've got here is I've got a domain controller and I've got a client computer running as a VM, and my domain controller is running as a server core install. So there is no GUI to the domain controller. Means that everything that we do, we're going to have to do remotely anyway. And if we were to do it locally, we would have to do it through some sort of command line interface to begin with. So a lot of what I'm going to do is use Active Directory as the way to interact with some stuff. I feel like most people are familiar with Active Directory, and that's a good way, like a good baseline for how to get at a bunch of data and then play with it after we move outside of the basic local use. So I wanted to point out a few things to start with, which is Windows comes pre-installed. It ships with, with PowerShell. And you'll notice that it's down here, Windows PowerShell is what it's called. So beyond that, we have the ability now to go out and install what is called just regular PowerShell. When looking at the basic usage, like for get process or creating files and folders and manipulation like that, for Active Directory management, things like that, there's really not much of a difference between Windows PowerShell and PowerShell. However, when we start looking at Office 365 management, Azure management, when we start doing things against the any sort of web APIs, we definitely want to start moving to PowerShell and not Windows PowerShell. In fact, I encourage people to that are starting out to just go ahead and skip Windows PowerShell, start writing your code in PowerShell 7. So that's where the development's going. Windows PowerShell is only there at this point to support legacy things. So everything that moves forward is going to come out of plain old PowerShell. The other cool thing that you're going to get from using plain old PowerShell is OS agnostic. So Windows PowerShell only works in a Windows operating system and nowhere else. However, we can install PowerShell 7 on a Mac computer and use it, and we can install it on a Linux computer and use it. And the really neat thing is a lot of the commandlets are exactly the same. So when I want to see the processes on any of those computers, I don't have to keep up with different ways to interact with each of those environments. If PowerShell's there, they're all get processed, right? So that's how that works. So today, I'm going to do all of my work inside PowerShell 7. Is that font big enough for everybody? Okay, excellent. So welcome to the world of PowerShell. So this is what the console looks like. Everything inside the console is built with a verb-noun structure. So anything that you ever want to do, it will always start with the action that you want to take. So do you want to get it, enable it, set it, disable it, connect, right? And then dash, and then the thing that you want to do that action to. So for processes, we could say we want to get dash process. Well, there we go, process, right? And then that would return all of my processes for me. So if you want to see, we could take a look here at get dash command. Get dash command will give us every possible command in the environment, so the entire console. There's going to be a lot of these, and instead of waiting on it to scroll through, we'll just take a look here and get a count real fast. So there's currently 2,857 commands available to a basic install of PowerShell 7. I can extend that by using things like modules and importing the Active Directory module or the MS Online module or the Exchange module, things like that, and extend the number of commands that are available. But right out of the gate, I have almost 3,000 commands available to me. And we could come in here and say get command where the verb is get, and that'll give us every one of the get commands. So again, there's going to be a lot of these. So let's pipe that into a measure object. So there's 791 ways for me to get data off of this computer. So, and this is kind of the start, right? This is where we want to start looking at how to interact with the data that's coming in and use PowerShell. The cool thing about PowerShell is it's incredibly exploratory. So it's built for you to go in and be interactive with it and just explore and take a look at things. And that's kind of, you know, what you should do. Like go in there and just play with it and enjoy it and just see what there is. Anything that has the word get in front of it is a 100% safe command to run. You can run it all day, every day, and you won't mess a thing up, right? It's only when you move into the set commands that we need to be worried, right? So set commands are always going to go and update or change something, but a get command's just giving you data. So we're using get right now and get command to go get this information. Let's start something up, right? So we have Notepad running, right? So here's Notepad, and if I go over here and I say get dash process, I keep tab completing a little too early. There we go. And then we know that we're looking for a process with the name of Notepad, so I can do that. And so get process gives me the information for this Notepad exe that's currently running right here. This is all of the information that you get by default. But what's really cool is PowerShell is backended by .NET, which means that everything's object-oriented. And an object is really just an abstract way of describing a thing. So let's leave technology for a minute and just think in general. When I say car, what do you picture? You picture something, right? It's probably got wheels and a steering wheel. It's got seats and seat belts. It's probably got a motor, right? And that car can do things. It can drive forward. It can turn left. It can turn right. It can brake. It can go in reverse, right? So there's these actions that the car has as well. So the car, if we were to abstract and move up a level, that's just a thing. It's an object, right? And the object has a bunch of methods and properties. It's got a bunch of actions and attributes. And those would be like the color of the car or whether it's a sedan or a coupe or an SUV, right? The kind of vehicle that it is. And then the actions, like its ability to drive forward or drive backwards or turn left or turn right, right? So thinking like that, we can apply that same concept logically to what we see in the computer. So this Notepad exe is an object. It's a thing, right? It's just this, and it has attributes about it. It's got ways for me to describe it and use it and interact with it. And if we take a look here, we can pipe this into get member and see what that object looks like. So this Notepad exe, I can describe it with all of these different properties right here, right? So here's its process ID. Here's the machine name it's running on. So somewhere in here should be its regular name or title. It'll probably be down here. No, it's in here somewhere. It doesn't matter. But what we see here is we see that there are a lot of different ways for me, there it is, process name. There are a lot of different ways for me to describe this object or to isolate this one object. So there could be many different EXEs and they all might have the same process name, right? So, if I wanted to get all of them, I could say, well, everything that uses this name, that's the stuff that I need to get. And then we would be able to take advantage of that. So I also want to point out that there's a bunch of these methods up top, right? And all these methods are actions that this EXE can do. It's things that we can make it happen. And the one that I like to pick on is using the close method, right? Or really, we'll use the kill method. That'll be safer, because close is going to ask me to save stuff. Kill just straight kills the process, no saves. It'll just die right off the bat. So this is a method, and so the method is an action. A property is an attribute. It's a thing that it looks like, right? So this is drive forward, drive backwards, turn left, and turn right. So properties, those are ways that we would describe it. It's the blue sedan. It's the, it's the green SUV, something like that, right? So that's how we're working between these two pieces. So let's do this here. Just gonna snap that over here. And then we're gonna run get process. And we know the name of the process is Notepad, and here it is, right? So, and then what I'm gonna do, because that returns an object, right? Just like we saw just now. So here's my object. And even though I only see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what's that, 6 columns, 7 columns. Even though I only see these 7 columns, all of that stuff that we just looked at up here is available to me to use. And so what we're gonna do is we're going to do that same thing, and I'm gonna wrap it in parens. So that means it's gonna return the entire object to me as one thing, and then I can dot notate that and use that single method and make Notepad disappear, which is pretty cool, right? So this is interacting with an object. Now we don't need to get this difficult when we use PowerShell though. PowerShell is made for you to do this in a sane way. Well, let me start Notepad. That is easier to follow and easier to read. And this is one of my favorite things about PowerShell is instead of having to create something that it keeps a normal non-developer from being able to follow and track what's going on, PowerShell is really verbose and it's with clear language. And so as you create code, your code just reads like a book, man. It's super awesome, right? So anybody can take a look at this line of code and see what I'm about to do. I'm going to go grab the Notepad and I'm going to stop it from working, right? Take a look. We're not going to, let me just see, here it is running, right? So it's right down here. When I run this, I might need to add a force on that, so we'll do that. And I hit enter. See how it disappears right off the bat? And in a super easy and clever way that lets anybody read that and know what's going on. So that's kind of how we're gonna how this whole get process, what it is, and then taking advantage of the object to do something else. So the stop process is just reading the object in and then invoking one of these actions to make it turn off, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here. Everybody feel good so far? Any questions? I'm gonna take the silence as a no. All right, so it's kind of the baseline, right? So I want you guys to understand that there's that the things that we're interacting with are objects and that they're just a bunch of properties that we can use to determine what we want to do with something later on. So the next thing I want to talk about is the pipeline. So you've been watching me use it already, right? So let me Notepad again. So if I do a get dash process, name, Notepad, and then I give it this character here, this weird up and down bar character, that's called a pipe. And pipelining is chaining things together. So as we do something here on the left-hand side, that object gets returned, and then it just gets thrown over this wall. And then whatever we do over here will happen next. And we can keep chaining actions together over and over and over and over again, right? So for this instance, we could say, I want to do the get dash member. And so running get-process for the Notepad exe, and then tell me about the object. So I could do that for other things too, right? So there's one for get Notepad. What about the PowerShell exe that we're currently running? I would have expected that to work. What did I, oh, because we're using core, so it's that one. Right, so here we go. So here's what this one looks like. And so you can see it's the same kind of attributes because they're both of the same class. They're both part of this process class, but the values for each of these are going to be different. So if we do get member for this one, and then we use select object, and we look for its process name, so it's going to return back PWSH. And if we do Notepad, it'll turn back Notepad, right? But I can select other things too, and we can see what those look like. So because they're both the same kind of class, they're both this process class, then we can say, you know what, I want to get either of those things, and then I want to see what their ID is, and I want to see when they started, right? We'll use each of those options instead. So how would I do something like that? So we could say get process, and that'll just return all processes. And then I'm going to throw every process over the wall, and then we'll pipe that into something new. So we could do like where object. And this is a way for me to filter content. So I'm going to take every one of the processes running on this computer, I'm going to throw it over the wall, and then I'm going to look at it. And we reference each individual object with $_ or $PS item, right? Either way. So $_ dot. And what are we interested in? We're interested in things that have a process name of Notepad or PWSH. So where $_ dot, and this is why that dot notation was important. We knew that there was a process name equals Notepad. Make sense? Everybody with me so far? So we're going to get every object, we're going to throw it over the wall, and then we're going to use this where object command to filter it. And we're going to look at this attribute, this one property, the process name property for each object. And if that property has the word Notepad in it, then we're going to return it back. And so in this instance, we'll just get the one thing. But I said we wanted two, right? Because we also want the PowerShell stuff. So we can use an OR statement and do the same thing. And then hit enter. And now we get back all three. See how that works? So we took all of the processes, get process, measure object. There's 100 processes that get returned, and then we filtered on them and whittled it down to just these processes right here. And then from those processes, we can just select the data we care about. So of all that different stuff, so let's go back one more time here and look at get member. So for a process object, we have all these different things that we can look at. So name, ID, start time, right? All these different things. And so that's what we care about, right? We care about, for these things, I really want to know when they started and how to identify them. So we're going to do that. And I've whittled all those objects down to what I care about, and then I've taken all of what I care about and only gotten the data about them that I care about. It's pretty cool, right? So this is an awesome way for me to go get a whole bunch of information from something and then start making decisions about that information. So this is pretty generic. So what we're right here, we're looking at process stuff. That's not really good for like, how applicable is this really? So let's look at something different. So I've got a bunch of AD users. Let's look at all the Active Directory users, all users. And so what I've done here is I've issued a command, get AD user, and then I'm storing all of that data locally on my computer in a variable. And this variable is referenced by a $sign first. So anytime you see this $sign, you're making a variable if it's left of the equal sign. And then later, if you want to use that variable, you just continue to use the $all users, and it'll just use that variable wherever you need it to, right? So we're going to say, let's take a look at all these users. And we could just look at one user, or we could look at the attributes of that user now, of what a user object looks like, rather, I should say, right? And so we have all this information stored on our computer now about every user in our Active Directory environment that we can play with, which is pretty slick. So let's take a look at some things in here. So this doesn't really give us much, does it? So we got first name, we got last name, we got SAM account name and UPN, but I'm missing some attributes, and that's just part of the way the Active Directory commandlet works. So let's reissue that command again. And this time we're going to do it with the property switch so that we can go get the things that we want. Now, how do I know what I want? Well, if we go out and we take a look at the get AD user commandlet, come on. This will give us a bunch of help data that tells us about what we want to do. So, and by default, we see that it gives us a very small amount of information. So if we come in and we scroll through here and we take a look, we read the documentation, we'll see this thing right here that talks about properties. So this specifies the different properties that we want to retrieve from Active Directory. So typically an Active Directory environment is going to be pretty large, and so in order to keep the workload down on the domain controllers and what gets returned to you, it only retrieves a subset of the user data. If you want all data, you'd have to put a star here. If you want specific other data, then you would have to amend that data and specify that you want it. And so this is an interesting thing to think about, right? So not all commandlets work exactly the same way. They're structured the same way. We'll always use verb-noun. We'll always reference our parameters with a dash, right? But the way that you interact with that commandlet is going to be different between the who creates those different pieces of instruction. And so you'll always want to be able to come out and find documentation for it. And I prefer to read it on the internet, but you don't have to. If you want to do it on your computer, you absolutely can do that. You'll do that with get help. So get help, get AD user will return back information about that commandlet for me right here as well. There's a bunch of different ways for us to do that. So sometimes I will use get help and I'll pass in the examples parameter just so that I can see how to use it real fast. Because a lot of times I'm looking for something that's basic, something very expected for the way you would use the commandlet. And I can come in and I can see an example of it and then be like, I know how to apply that to my needs, and then go off and send it right away. And I don't need to be burdened with reading all of the help documentation. Sometimes you need to. And if you want to do that inside here, we can do that by issuing full. And that'll give us all of the help documentation that we would have seen in the website, right? So there's a lot of information to come through here. And the other one that you can do is show window, and it will actually pop it. Oh, wait, where'd it go? There it is. It will pop it out into its own graphical window right here. So there's 3 different ways for you to get your help. You can get it through show window, you can get it through the website, through docs.microsoft, or you can do it within the console itself. But doing this will let me know what I need to know. And so really, we're going to be interested in repopulating the all users, but this time we're going to do it with everything. And you'll see this is going to take a much longer amount of time to populate because I'm retrieving so much more data than I did the first time. And that's why that's there. That's why it works like that. So now if we take a look, we'll see that that's a lot bigger. I have a lot more things to key on now, don't I? So there's tons of stuff in here for me to look at. And I'm interested in, let's look at department. So for my users, so all users, we have 984 users in this domain. So, and if I want, I can say, well, for all of these users, I want to know what their department is. And that'll tell me what their department is, but that's not useful. I can't read that, right? That's not going to work for me. So why don't we take all users and pipe that into select object department. Okay, so that's getting a little better. So I'm in the same place that I started with. And now if I pass in unique, oh, that took a whole bunch of information and distilled it down into something that I'm interested in, right? So how many different departments do I have? Well, I have this many different departments. And in fact, I don't even have to do the math. We can just put that in measure object and it'll tell me I have 8, right? So what are some other ways that we could use something like this? Well, maybe we have people adding users by hand. And when doing it by hand, sometimes mistakes happen. And so let's make us a new user. So we'll just, we'll come in and we'll make us a user real fast. Hold on. There we go. And then let's go to that user. All right. So check this out. So let's go and do this command again, right? Except this time we'll run it without passing it into a variable. And this time we'll just grab department. So that means that my command will run much faster than it did last time. And since I already know from up top what I'm looking for, we can just pipe all of that without even storing it into a variable directly into the next command and hit enter. And here we go. So now we can see it. So out of 985 users now, I was able to distill all of my departments. And here I can see that, ooh, that's a department that's doesn't exist. Somebody messed up. So it's missing its E, isn't it? So how do we find that user or sets of users? Because there could be more than one of these, right? If we wanted to know how many there were, we could even take this data. We don't need unique now. We would want, oh, come on. There we go. So now we're going to get all the users. We want the department attribute. We're going to select that attribute and group everything by that attribute. Hit enter. Pretty cool, right? I don't even need the select in all honesty. In fact, it'd be better if I didn't have it. And I'll show you why. So take a look what we're looking at here. So see, we can see all of these, but we're just selecting the department attribute. So it's just keying on that one attribute over and over. If we group by department for the original user, then we'll get every one of the users that's in each of those departments. And so here I can see that there are 3 accounts that don't have a department filled in, and that's the administrator account, the guest account, and my curb ticket account. We can see the separation of users across departments here and their accounts. And I can see that I only have 1 in the research and development account right here, which really should have been right here, right? But I could have had many here. And if I had, then we would solve the problem the same way. Anybody want to take a shot at what I need to write in for that? All right. So we're going to go with filter. And then what are we looking for? We're looking for this department attribute, right? So department equals, and then I see the broken one right here. So we're going to grab that, paste that in, and that'll give me all of the users that have the wrong department. See how that works? So this could have been 100 users. Doesn't matter to me. I now see all of the ones that have the wrong name, and I'm about to fix them. So we're going to do this. This is going to return all the users, and then we're going to just pipe that into a set80 user. And then we want to change the department property, and so set80 user already has one for that, so we're going to say department. And then to make sure we get it right, let's just copy and paste the correct name to it. And that fast, I fixed my user. And I can prove it to you, because if we come and take a look here, notice the one of research and development's missing. Just research and development exists. So that's pretty cool, right? Now, IT really should say information technology. Let's go fix 151 users. And we can use the exact same thing that we have right here. All we got to do is make a couple changes. So department should be IT. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for all the users where their department looks like this. And what do we want to turn it into? We want to turn it into information technology, right? Hit enter, done. I've fixed 151 users that fast. That's where the cool part of PowerShell shows up, right? So it's working at scale. The ability for me to go and do something to so many things at one time is super awesome and powerful. And we can, again, double check that work right here. I now have 151 users in information technology. It's pretty cool, right? So this is kind of how it works, right? This is like the basics of PowerShell. It's coming in here and getting things and just exploring. No matter what you get, you can always explore off of it, right? So we can say, let's get print configuration. Oh, well, there's nothing on that one. Well, let's try something different then. Let's see, so get command. Let's see, what are some other things that I can do? Well, that's a lot of stuff. How do I bring that one down? And so you might learn to do the, the get part like we looked at earlier, or you could do it by piping that into a where object, right? Just like we saw earlier. And that's a name. So we're going to use name here. We're looking for things that start with the word get. And then here's all of those get commands. So either one of those gets me to the same place. And then once we have that, we can come in and say, well, let's take a look at one of these things and just try it. Right? That's the best way to come in here and learn this stuff, is to be curious. Right? So we can come in, let's take a look. Net adapter, let's do that one. Well, what's net adapter do? Get net adapter. We'll just run it. Let's see what happens. Because I can't hurt anything, it's just a get. Oh, that's cool. It gives me some information about my network adapter. What other information does it have on it? Get member. Oh, that's got a lot of information on it. Wonder what some of these other things look like. Wonder what operating status is, Wonder what this status descriptions or status info means. So we could just go do that, right? We can just say, well, get net adapter and select those things. Wonder what that is. Apparently it's not populated. Oh, that one's populated, of the state of 2, right? And now we have something to Google off of. Now we just go take that and be like, so what does state 2 mean? And we can go figure that out. And then you'll learn these things and expand that knowledge, and you'll get comfortable just passing information in and out of the pipeline inside your PowerShell console. And it'll turn into this fantastic place for you to just go get a ton of information from and distill it down to really good workable data. Right? So we took 984 people and determined that out of that 984, 151 people had IT, and it should have been information technologies, and 1 had research and development instead of research and development. And in seconds, we were able to fix 152 users, right? So that's super cool stuff. Everybody feeling good so far? All right, so Tim asked a question about how do you add the pipe that I did not answer earlier. So the pipe, Tim, if you look above your enter key is usually where it is. it should be the alternate character for backslash. So the key that does this, if I hold shift, I can make it do pipe. And so that's how we get the pipe to kick off. So just type the first part of it, and then pipe that with shift and the backslash key into whatever else that it is that we want to do. Jackie can't see where I'm actually typing. Is anybody else having trouble seeing where I'm typing? Okay. Was it, it might have been at that moment, was I typing up high? If I was typing up high, maybe I was, like a bar or something was covering it. I'll make sure that I keep my content lower in the display window. And then Jonathan, you were asking about what the function of the $ in PowerShell is. The $ is a special character to represent variable, right? So if I do, if I type in first name, so it's going to complain to me because it's going to think that that's a command. But if I do $first name, then this time it knows that I'm about to give it information and store it in a variable called first name. So we can do that with something like this. Right, and so now I have two different variables that are stored. And if we just echo those back out, so $first name, or better yet, why don't we do it like this? $last name, comma, space, $first name. All right, so now we can take this data and then we can start restructuring it. You were typing in the lower part of the screen and it is blocked by the zoom bar. Oh, well then why don't I do this? I thought I was helping out by making a full screen window. I apologize. So I'll start doing it in a normal window and then that should stay in the middle of the screen. Is that cool? So like I was saying, right? So first name, Jeremy, last name, Brown. So I've stored these strings in these variables, and now I can take these variables and just echo them out in any order that I want. So here we're going to reformat that data to be last name, comma, space, first name. And if I hit enter, you can see that that's what my output looks like. Right? Pretty neat, right? So we could do that too with like all of, we got all users, right? Well, all users have this information about given name and surname. So why don't we do something with that, right? So we could do $all users. Let's pipe that into a new command. Let's talk about for each object. So where object is a way for me to filter data. So I take all 985 users that's in, or 84 users that's in all users, and I'm going to filter it by those attributes, by those properties to return a subset of that data. For each object takes everything that's in here and then does something for each one of them. So we're going to pass the object over the pipeline into for each object. And then inside of here, we're going to be able to do other things with that data, right? So here, why don't we rewrite all of those values so we can do $_dot given name, comma, space, $_dot. Wait, I'm doing that backwards. Surname, comma, space, $_dot. Given name, right? Like that right there. So and then this time what's going to happen is each user is going to get passed into the pipeline, and then for each object is going to expand those values that we've told it to and then output just the names of those users. But this is going to fail. And the reason that's going to fail is when doing the string, the dot notation inside this for each object is picked up as part of the string. And so really what we're looking at is, if you take a look, you can see each line is duplicated with a dot surname and a dot given name at the end, because it's giving out the entire object and then adding the string dot surname or given name to the bottom of it. And that's not what we want. And so we can wrap that in parentheses. like this. And now PowerShell is going to say, oh, I'm supposed to invoke this and expand that out first. And then I'm going to take that value and put it as part of the string, add a comma and a space, expand this, and end the string with it. So this will give us what we expected to see, right? So that's kind of how the $ works, right? So the $ is a unique character in PowerShell that's there for variables and for expansion of those variables by using it in these ways here. Are variable values only available while in PowerShell, or can they be exported? So anything can be exported, Janice. It doesn't have, the variable is only there during the time of the session. So for right now, all users exists, right? Boom. When I close this session and then I reopen it, if I try to type all users now, there's nothing there. So the sessions are only valid for the time, or the variables are only valid for the time of that session. However, that doesn't mean that whatever I put there can't be saved. So if we do git command and we look for a command whose name starts with export, you'll see that there are a ton of export commands. So we can export this data as a CSV data. We can support or export it as an XML data. We can export it as, well, hold on. The other one then is git-command out. We can export it as just a file of information for whatever it is currently. And so those are all different ways for me to get data out. So let's talk about those users again, right? So I'm going to get all my users, get data, filter users, because somebody said, hey, I need to get a list of all the users in our domain. And really, and I need to know, you know, who they are. So we'll do a SAM account name, user principal name, and I need to know where they work. So we'll go with department as well, right? And if manager was populated, we could even, do something like what's their manager, but I currently don't have it populated. So this will give us a bunch of information about all of those users. Whoops, what did I do wrong? Properties, department. Closer, oh, name. There we go. Boom. User principal name. That seems like that should work. Why didn't that one work? Is user principal name not on by default? I thought that was. Yeah, all right, hold on a second here. Let's figure out why this isn't working, shall we? Oh, apparently I'm not populating user principal name. That's why. Okay, so user principal name is not currently populated, so we won't be able to use that one. But I could still do SAM account name and department for the example here. So department, right? And I don't need this. That is there by default. So we'll just run that command real quick. And so here we can see all of the SAM account names and all of the different departments that they're a part of. And how do I store that data? So while we could just do a export CSV and then send it to public documents, all users.csv, enter, boom, right? So, and then here is that CSV available to me as a file. And so we can see here's my header and then each of my values underneath that. And then I could use this later by using import CSV. all. There we, come on. Then where I put it, C use, oh, desktop, sorry. Right, and then let's throw that in a variable here. So now we can see $A has all of the same information in it. So we can totally take data into PowerShell, work our magic, only select what we need to, rewrite, reform whatever we need to, and then export that data out in some sort of structured content. And then after we have that, pass it on to somebody else, and then they can open it up and use it for whatever it is that suits their needs, or whatever needs to be there. Okay, so does PowerShell 7 have an ISE? It does not. In Windows PowerShell in the old days, right, we used, I keep typing Windows. So we use this PowerShell ISE as a script editor. The integrated script editor is what ISE stands for the Windows PowerShell. PowerShell 7 does not have the ISE, but there's something better, which is VS Code. So VS Code is the new ISE. And so here we can come in and use this script editor to manage and write scripts inside the computer for Windows PowerShell, or for regular PowerShell, excuse me, either one. So like here we can say something like, I don't know, 0.100 right dash host. Oh, that's why. Tell you your PowerShell $_. And then just hit play, and then here we'll see on the screen 0 to 100 should pop. It's got to start up. This is first time it's ever been used, so it should take it a second to start. Come on. It shouldn't take that long. Why is that not working? Let's just make sure that that works. Copy. Yeah, I broke something. I don't know that I need brackets. I bet that's what it is. Whoops. That'll work. So play. All right, so I still got it wrong. Oh, let's do this. Since we're in the ISE, let's do something a little better, shall we? So $numbers equals 0 to 100. And then we'll say for each $item in $numbers, do work. Except now this won't work because that needs to be $item. There we go. And then there we can see that code runs. So there is an ISE variant, and it's actually much bigger and better than what the ISE was. And so PowerShell 7 itself, the console doesn't have an integrated scripting environment to go along with it. The expectation is that you're going to move over to VS Code. So VS Code supports Python, it supports .NET, C#, JavaScript, like all kinds of stuff, right? There's tons of things that we can do with VS Code beyond PowerShell. So it's a more versatile and more developed scripting environment, or IDE development environment, than what the ISE was. Does PowerShell 7 work if you want to check your data without saving a file? Pipe to out grid view. Yeah, so that was an issue, but no longer. Although this might not work for me. Let's try and see. Get dash process, or rather we'll just stick with get 80 user. Come on, get dash 80 user. So during the PowerShell beta days, the outgrid view was reliant on some .NET framework classes that didn't exist in .NET Core. However, that's been rewritten. And so we now have outgrid view, and it actually runs faster than it did with .NET framework in .NET Core now. And so this is the outgrid view that he was talking about, that Thomas was talking about. And so PowerShell 7 does have outgrid view. Okay, so answers those questions. We're almost at time, and I just took a look at that. Does anybody else have any other questions before we start talking about anything else? Is there something anybody wants to see that we haven't specifically talked about? All right. Then we'll just keep talking about some little things here that we can and can't do. So I would want to show you where can we find commands to see get properties. Are you? I'm not 100% what you're asking, Gilbert. Are you asking to where do you find the properties of commands? Like how to use each individual command? So get command will give us such as get service computer name with log on as. So, can you unmute? Because I'm still not 100%. Okay, no worries. So you're looking for with log on as. I'm not sure what that means. Get dash service still. Because you're talking about like remoting into something. Where can we find commands to see get property? So I'll take a stab at it. Services running on remote computers. Show services running with system. Ah, okay. So it's a specific query that you're looking for. All right. Well, so you're looking for, you want to find computers that show services running with system credentials or admin credentials. Let's try and see what we can figure out, right? So on our own computer, we can run get service, and we can get a list of all of the different services. All right, that's cool. And if we run that into get member, we can see what that service object looks like. And does it have something that tells us what it's running as? Perhaps that username will work for us. Let's give it a shot. So that looks like it's going to do its job, right? So here we now see that I can go grab all the services and select the username and see which ones are running as system or local service. So let's go find everything that's just running as local system then, right? That's the question. And so get service, we're going to pipe that into a where object. So, and then $_ dot, and then we said this was username equals, and we only want those that are listening on local system. And then we care about the name and the display name of those things, right? And so here we go. So here's that list. So all of these things are going to be running as local system, and here's the name and the display name for each one. So that's step one. So we got a command that works on our computer. So in order to do this on other computers, so all we need to do is invoke -command to run that remotely on a different computer. So let's go and say invoke command DC01, and then the script block that we want to run, let's just run hostname, and we should see this return back with the name of the domain controller, DC01, right? So if instead of doing that, we take all of this, whoops, we take all of this, we copy that, and we paste it into here. So this will return back all of the services that are running. Interesting. Why did that not work? Enter -ps session. Services do have some weird gotchas, and I think we might be running into one of those. Oh, my bad. Yeah, that's weird. So I get all of those. There's no username property here. So when coming in remotely, I don't get to see the user that's running there. So we could definitely do this. I know a way to get this, Gilbert, still, but I think we're going to have to go a little deeper into it. So if we do a get sim instance, I believe it's win32 service. I bet we're going to need to look under here. So this one's going to get a little crazy. So I'll tell you what, let me give you guys my contact information. If y'all have questions, please feel free to ask me. Send me an email. So that's my email. If y'all ever want to have any questions, I'm available. I'd also like to take a moment to plug the local user group. So RTP SUG is the local user group, Research Triangle PowerShell's user group. So there's 2 meetings a month, and there's a GitHub and a YouTube channel and a bunch of cool stuff about PowerShell there. And for Gilbert, I think we can solve your problem, but I don't want to run late on time. So we'll have to get with me offline, and we'll get that squared up. Okay, let me see. There were some other questions. So we answered the ISC, we answered that. How do we start plugging these commands into scripts that can be scheduled to run as a scheduled task? So in the last minutes, Kevin, I can answer your question. So to make us to do that, right, we first need to make the script. And so that's where VS Code comes into play. So we'll use VS Code to write the script that we want to run. So new file, PowerShell file. So we'll say $user equals $environment. Why is this not working? $env. Is it not? No. Username. All right. So we'll store the username here, and then let's say new -item path. And the path's going to be C:\users $user /desktop. Foo.txt. Right, so here's a very simple and short script, right? So grab the user, and then we're going to take that user and we're going to create a file on the desktop that's called foo.txt. And is there a force? There is a force that should make the overwrite happen. So let's file save that. And we'll just throw this in the public documents script demo. So step one is just make a file, right? We just need we need this thing that's going to do the work for us. So now that we have this thing, we should be able to we should test that. So let's do that. So let's head over to users, public, documents. Is that where I put it? Where did I put this thing? I don't remember. That's not good. Yeah. Users, public, public documents. Is that not where I am? Oh, exit. I was still on DC01. Haha. CD, users, public, documents. All right, so here's my file. So let's run that real fast and just make sure that it makes me a foo.txt. Okay, cool. So now that we see that it's working, so we'll delete that. And then we're going to head over to schedule tasks. And then in order to make something run on a regular basis, you just put it in a scheduled task. So we'll create a quick little task here. And we'll call this the script demo. And we would need to choose the specificity in which we want this to happen. So we'll say daily at, or better yet, how about when I log on. So we're going to start a program, and the program that we want to run is going to be C. I'll browse to it. It's going to be PowerShell, right? So we're going to head over to C, program files, Windows PowerShell. Nope. Oh. Where am I at? 32. And then the parameter that we're looking for. And so in this instance, we want file C:, users, public, documents, and then script demo.ps1. Say next, finish. So now I have a scheduled task that's set to run when I log on, right? Right here. And if we just go ahead and run it real fast on demand, oop, that did not do what I wanted it to. And I know what that problem was because we haven't used it yet. Windows PowerShell, set-exe. So there's this thing called execution policy, and I'll bet money that's what I did. So by default, Windows PowerShell is set to restricted, which means it won't run a script. And so we're going to have to change that execution policy. So we're going to set it to the worst thing that we can, which is unrestricted, which means it'll run anything it's ever asked to run, no matter what, all the time. We have other options like all signed and remote signed. Those are better solutions for a production environment. However, testing environment, we're not going to bother with certificates right now. So that gets that done. So now I bet if I run it, it'll work. Boom, boom. And what's cool is it does exactly what we tell it to, right? So here's my foo. So if I put some stuff in here and save that, and we run it again, it'll go away. Because I just created a new item and overwrote the old one, so we're looking at an empty foo. So the ways that we would build something for automation is you would go into VS Code, or you would write the script using the basic commands of a PowerShell that you need. And then once you have the code that works and runs like you want it to, save that file and just throw it on a scheduled task. So, all right, so we're a little bit over. I appreciate everybody for showing up and for hanging around a little bit long. Like I said, if there's anything I can do to help, don't be afraid to ask. The RTP Sug user group is a great place to continue your learning journey. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Jeremy.
My email address is jeremy.brown@nccourts.org. And I'd also say you can find me on GitHub at Banana Jamma. So 2 different ways to get me. My professional is nccourts.org, jeremy.brown@nccourts.org. And my personal, you can find me on GitHub at Banana Jamma.
Another great session, Jeremy. Enjoyed it. So those that are still hanging around, we are having our business partner reception this afternoon, so you can go visit our business partners, and please do, because they are very instrumental. Without having our business partners, our conferences just wouldn't be what they are today. So I encourage everyone to stop by the virtual exhibit halls to visit many of the business partners that provide the services to the cities and counties and the citizens that we represent. Do go show them some love. So enjoy the rest of the conference. And also at 5:45, we'll be giving out prizes as well. So just wanted to let you guys know that. All righty, we're done, Jeremy.
All right. It was fun.
Great session.